Why are we having such trouble getting online?
Well, it says here we might be having a problem with our download.
A man can only eat so much fiber.
Yeah. Oh, and then it says maybe our bits aren't streaming fast enough.
At our age, we're lucky they're streaming at all.
Well, this thing doesn't work. What do you want to do now?
Nothing.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. Tuning in live, I want to especially thank you for giving me your time so early. Hope you enjoyed the little deviation there, a little mockery, if you will, because if you were living under a rock, then I'll just tell you the presidential debate last night happened. And it happened between a 78-year-old man and an 81-year-old man. It was painful. It was, and I mean that earnestly, and not in a, I'm not trying to be mean. I mean, what is going on in this country where we thought it was a good idea to send out two 80-year-old men to debate in front of the entire country who would be better to lead this country? Now, I get it. There are some 80-year-olds who are just sharp. Okay. I think I saw an interview with Thomas Sowell, who's like in his 90s. I think he's like 91, I think, something like that. But he was older. He's older than both of the presidents. And he is still pretty sharp. But again, being pretty sharp on something that you've done the majority of your life and things that you've talked about, and then being sharp to go out and debate the quality of your work and whether or not you're better suited than somebody else, those are entirely different things. Now, what's interesting about this debate, they streamed it live on CNN and they had some weird rules. I don't really know what the rules were about, but they had if you think about some of the rules, it's kind of obvious. So they cut each other's mics so they couldn't talk over each other. Okay, that's cool. I don't mind that. It tends to, like what happens in debates, we see it all the time. One person says something, the other one's like, no, and they try to out talk each other, right? And they're just trying to talk over. And it can be kind of annoying. And just like let the person speak and you can make your rebuttal in just a moment. And so I can appreciate that. Let's see. I don't really understand why they had it in a room where it was only the moderators, but they did not have an audience. So that seemed a bit kind of weird. But I get it. I mean, maybe it's because they're 80 and they were like, look, we need to be able to control things if something happens, right? And then the other rule, which I think was a terrible rule, they didn't allow them to come in with any notes. And that one was kind of puzzling at first. But then after I watched the debate, and then after I saw some of the commentary on the debate, I think I know why. I think this was a bit of a setup. I really do. I think it was a setup to get Biden out of there. And because, let's face it, and we'll get into this in a little bit here, but we've been talking for months, maybe even longer than that, about his declining mental acuity. Like, this has been a topic of conversation all over. People have talked about it. People who support him are like, no, he's doing just fine. People who are opposed to him are like, look, he can barely find his way. He can barely find his way back to wherever he needs to be from the lectern. And so here we are, like, we've been having this debate about his, mental faculties. And then he goes into debate. He doesn't do so well. And then people act shocked and they're like, wow, his debate performance was really terrible. Well, yeah. What did you expect? And, I'm reminded of this quote. I don't know if I'll get it correct. It's from FDR. I get it. I know it's FDR, but sometimes, people have some good insight, regardless of bad policy. And he said something to the effect of, nothing happens in politics on accident. Something happens, it was intentional, right? They didn't accidentally put Biden up and he did terrible and they're shocked and they're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I thought he was going to do so much better." No, you didn't. No, you didn't. We've been talking about it. And then people that work closely with him, this is what they see every day, all day long. They know where he is. And we've all got grandparents and old people that we know that just they're slowing down, they're 70, 80, maybe even 90 years old, and they're just simply not where they used to be. It's just a fact of life. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's not to be embarrassed. I mean, I don't want to make fun of him, because like he is 81 and who knows? Maybe when I'm 81, I won't be nearly that good. I don't know. I hope so. I hope that I will be is able to get on this spot. I don't know if I'll be podcasting in like 40 some years, 30 some years, right? I'm 46. I don't know if I'll be podcasting when I'm 81, but let's just say that podcasting really takes me the distance. And at 81, I still want a podcast. Seems a bit weird, but let's just assume. Well, I hope that I can do at least as well as he did, if not better, actually. So it's just a fact of life. There's no embarrassment. There's no shame here that he did poorly. I think I think the people that put him up there should be ashamed of themselves because I think they did it on purpose. Now, what do I want to talk about? Do I want to play the debate? So there was all this hullabaloo about like, okay, CNN is going to stream this, and then they're going to get with YouTube, and if they find that people are streaming it and offering their commentary, on the spot, they're going to stop them and all that good stuff. And so everybody did that. So I didn't because I was like, well, a lot of people are going to do this, and that's cool. But I didn't, one, my show is a morning show, and we've already watched it, most of you. And if you haven't watched it, you're not really missing anything. Now, if you did watch it, well, you're not going to want to watch it again because it was rough. It was just painful. Biden was not, he just was, he's 81. And then Trump was kind of Trump. I mean, he was like a dialed down Trump. I mean, it was, like imagine Trump from 2015, 2016. Imagine a 2016 Trump and you gave him Ritalin. That's kind of what he was like. Like, he still had the same personality, everything was great. Like, everything he talked about that he did was great, like, phenomenal. And he'd always just recently read some report that somebody gave him. He said that multiple times in the night. Like, "Oh, I just read this thing, and it said that I did the greatest at this thing." Like, wow, how convenient is that? Like people are just raving reviews about you, about how great you are, and just you're awesome. And then he was like, "We're gonna make America great again." And I'm like, "Well, okay." Like, wasn't it not? I mean, like, did you not already do that? It's kind of a weird slogan at this point. Like, if you did everything so great in your term as president, then like I would feel like he needs to have some kind of a different slogan or message, but the message is the same. Like, we're going to make America great again. But if you had already made America great, right? Like, it just seems weird. Like, he might as well just come out and say, look, I already made America great again. Biden ruined it. We're going to go back to what I did. Like, some message like that, that kind of indicates that, yes, I made America great. Now, I don't believe any of that nonsense. Like, he's just full of it, right? And he did drop a lot of numbers. So that was interesting. I was like, wow, you're keeping the fact checkers busy because they're gonna have to try to figure out like all these numbers, like, are they accurate? And I don't really care about all that because I just assume that if you're a politician and you're telling me some numbers that make you look good, chances are you're either lying or you've found some way to massage and manipulate the numbers in your favor. That's just kind of how I see it, because that's your job. Your job is to sell yourself to me and everybody else. All right, so let's get into this. I want to play. What I'm going to do is, instead of playing the debate, and kind of as a little snub to CNN for pulling that stunt where they were like, "Well, we're just going to stop everybody from streaming our stream," which is absurd because, like, hello, that's like half the internet. The other half is like TikTok videos. Right, but, like, the people do that all the time. They stream, like, I have streamed, maybe not live stream, but I have streamed other people's podcasts to talk about them, Like, this happens all the time. People stream stuff and commentary. So, the idea that they would say, "Nope, you can't do that for the debate," that's just insane. Now, I don't know how well they enforced it, but I don't really care. The fact that they were willing to do that kind of, gets on my nerves. So, as a little snub to them, and because I don't want to actually review the debate itself, I found like a 30-minute clip of the debate analysis, and it was kind of interesting. And I was like, you know what, this would be good. I'm gonna play the debate analysis. Now, what I did was I sped it up a little bit, so they're gonna sound a little weird, but that's so that we're not spending like 30 minutes just listening to their analysis and then me analyze their analysis and give commentary. But I thought it was kind of interesting, and I thought it would make for a slightly different show and a way just to kind of stick it to the man, if you will, and say, hey, look, we live in the podcast age, all these podcast bros and ladies, and we stream stuff at our leisure. There's lots of fair use going on. So, CNN, you can just stuff it. All right. So let's see what we got here. Let's pull this up and let's start playing it. Now, I did want to, somebody write, I love this comment here. Um, Chase's tweets won. RFK did better than both Trump and Biden. Like that was like before the show even started. So like somebody's like really getting in here and like, yeah, like, that's kind of a good summary. So show's over. Just kidding. No, we're going to keep going. So, we're going to go through and just, and check out, what people had to say, because it seems like the Democratic Party is freaking out. I'm gonna give you. I'm gonna say freaking out a little loosely there, because I think a lot of it was a lot more intentional. I mean, maybe the regular people like myself are freaking out and they're like, "Oh my God, I didn't realize he was so bad." Well, that's because you had your head in the sand. But I think the commentators, the people in positions of power, I think they knew or had an inkling. So anyway, let's play this clip. Let's start playing this. All right.
Making their way off the CNN debate stage. Looks like Jill Biden, the first lady, has come out. Former President Trump walking off the stage.
All right,
The
so
first
this
debate
is
of the
right
2024 campaign
after.
and the earliest presidential debate ever now in the books and in front of the voters. Tonight, along with Aaron Burnett, the first word on what those voters might make of it from our political professionals, from our CNN Flash Poll and Swing State Focus Group. We'll be talking to surrogates, including Vice President Harris, getting fact checks from our Daniel Dale, and new reporting from inside both campaigns. With me here, CNN political commentator Scott Jennings, Kate Bedingfield, David Urban, Van Jones, Alyssa Farr Griffin, and Newsnight anchor Abby Phillip, David Axelrod, and CNN chief national correspondent John King. John, let me start with you. Your thoughts.
All right, so they brought in a bunch of people. They were like, all right, we're bringing in John King, Van Jones, and this person and this person. So like, this is a huge deal. They're like, all right, we're bringing the big guns, okay? And so now they're at this ginormous table, and they're all going to talk about Biden's the debate, but largely they're going to be talking about Biden's performance. So let's watch.
Anderson, this was a game-changing debate in the sense that right now, as we speak, there is a deep, a wide, and a very aggressive panic. It started minutes into the debate, and it continues right now. It involves party strategists, it involves elected officials, it involves fundraisers. And they're having conversations about the president's performance, which they think was dismal, which they think will hurt other people down the party in the ticket. And they're having conversations about what they should do about it. Some of those conversations include, should we go to the White House and ask the president to step aside? Other of the conversations are about, should prominent Democrats go public with.
All right, so that's wild. Think about this for a minute. He just said that there are people that are freaking out to the point that they're considering asking the president to step aside. Now, I assume they just mean the race, but imagine if they mean like, you know what? Maybe you should just step down from the presidency now. Like, I don't know. It's a little unclear exactly to what extent they mean, but just the fact that they're talking about this, I think is phenomenal. Like, and I before I went to bed, I was seeing tweets on CNN. I was seeing tweets, talking about like how CNN and the Democrat Party is throwing Biden under the bus. And like right here, we're not even a minute in, and they're definitely tossing. They're like, "Yep, it was terrible." And there's a lot of people that want to go public. Like there are people that are freaking out.
That call because they feel this debate was so terrible. They do say in moments in the debate later, the president got better and got his footing, but then at the end, even his closing statement was a little halting. The contrast between the two candidates. Let me be clear. None of them, and a lot of Republicans, don't think Donald Trump had a great night. Donald Trump broke the fact check machine more than I can count tonight. That will be on the record as we go forward. He refused to answer some very specific and direct questions about his conduct, about January 6th and what all. So that will be dealt with out there. And sometimes there's a parallel universe between the political elites and the American people. It'd be nice to see what the voters say. But I can tell you, it started minutes in. It started with the first couple of answers, and it has continued throughout the night from oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, to what do we do about this? And it involves very senior people in the Democratic Party, including elected officials, saying we have a problem.
And just to co-sign what John is saying, I mean, the panic that I am hearing.
Look at all those people. Like all those people, every one of them is like flipping out. All of these people, amazing.
From Democrats is not like anything that I have heard in this campaign so far. And a lot of it has to do with, first of all, there was a deep frustration about Trump's lies. I mean, he lied a lot tonight. But the problem for Biden was that Trump was able to take sometimes incredible falsehoods and turn them into some kind of argument, whereas Biden's answers were, in a lot of cases, not coherent, deeply problematic, that he was not able to take pretty straightforward answers and answer them to the American public. And then also, at some points, bringing things up that teed up Trump attacks. So there's a real concern here tonight that there's been some real damage done that cannot be undone. Biden solidified the perception among voters, but especially among his base. They were hoping that tonight would be a game changer. They are now seeing a president who is in the White House, who they do not necessarily believe can do this for another 4 years.
David Axelrod?
Look, all right. So I want to highlight here, kind of just make sure that you understand what just happened. So she said, you know, Trump lied all over the place, and they'll continue talking about how he lied. But notice, unlike in the past, normally what they would do is they would say, "Oh man, Trump told so many lies," and I'm not disagreeing with them, but this is what they normally would do. They would normally talk about all the lies that he said, and then pick one that stands out, and then start talking about it. But instead, what they're doing now is they're like, you know, Trump told all these lies, but Biden, blah 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 blah. Right. So then they go on and they're talking about Biden. It's like, I don't think I've ever heard that before. I've never heard them, you know, journalists and media personalities lead with how Trump lied and then shift to criticizing their own candidate, the candidate that they would favor. Like, I don't think I've ever heard that, like, not to this extent. I mean, maybe I'm sure you can find a clip somewhere where they did that. But overall, what you would see if you go back, you're gonna find that they would say like, "Oh, but Trump lied, blah blah blah. Biden said this, but let's go back to Trump's lie," right? Like they would stay focused on the criticism of Trump. But in this case, they're not. They're just like making it a like an additional comment, and then moving right back to their concern with Biden. So, like, I think this says something.
I can't argue with either of them about how the Democratic leaders are reacting to this poll. We said at the beginning that each person had a fundamental goal. And for Biden, that goal was to appear energetic, engaged, and look like someone who is capable of serving for another 4 years for president. That was job number one. I actually think he scored a bunch of points. I think if you just judge this on sort of policy stuff, he did score a bunch of points on issues like abortion, for example, on some of the economic issues. But there is a feeling, I think there was a sense of shock, actually, how he came out at the beginning of this debate, how his voice sounded, he seemed a little disoriented. He did get stronger as the debate went on, but by that time, I think the panic had set in. And I think you're going to hear discussions that I don't know will lead to anything, but, there are going to be discussion about whether he should continue. And I think part of it is Donald Trump did not meet his mission either. He could not resist the temptation to be nasty, to prevaricate about a whole bunch of things, about his own record, about Biden's record, and to seem petty and small at times. So what you saw was a candidate who's deeply vulnerable.
Okay, so that was kind of weird because now I get it. Like, I don't know where they're getting their information from as far as the mission. Like, what was their goal? Okay, but it would seem like to me that the goal for Biden would be to come out and show people that, yes, he has the energy, he has the stamina, he is prepared for another 4 years. Okay, that makes sense. But then they turn to Trump and they're like, well, he didn't make his mission either. He couldn't resist. And then they list all the things that he is known for. Like, that's what he does. So I don't know exactly how he missed his mission. It sounded like he stayed focused to do exactly what he would normally do, which is to boast about how everything that he does is super duper great. He read some report that says, you know what, Trump's numbers are the best. They're probably the best ever in history. Even in alternate history, timelines better than them. Like he just goes on and on and on. And then to criticize his opponent, whoever his opponent happens to be, belittle them, talk like there was that one point. What did Trump say? It was kind of brutal. And I only give him a pass because he's also old. So I'm like, all right, well, if two old men want to kind of take a jab at each other like that, then fine. But he said something like, um, Biden was saying something, and then in response to him, Trump said, well, he doesn't even know. I don't even know what he just said. I don't think he knows either. Right. Now, that was pretty brutal. Like I would like as somebody who's just observing, who's also only 46. I don't know that I would personally say that because I just think that's a bit mean spirited to somebody who's that old. But Trump is also 78. So he's only 3 years younger. So I guess he's in that range where he kind of gets a pass to say these kind of things. Like, because, in the next year, that may be Trump anyway. So, but it's very interesting that they're saying that what Trump normally does, what they normally would criticize, that somehow this was no longer his mission. But I don't know where they're getting that information, but it seems made up.
And a president who may not be able to take advantage of it.
Listen, if anybody in America thinks that that was even close to being an okay debate by Joe Biden, I'm living in a parallel universe. That was an unmitigated disaster for President Biden from the second he walked out to the closing statement. The biggest issue for Democrats is abortion, and he couldn't give an answer. He gave an answer for he couldn't even give a coherent answer on the biggest issue for Democrats tonight. I've heard from leading Democrats across the United States, elected governors, congressmen, who are texting me and saying, I'm worried I'm going to lose if Joe Biden's at the top of the ticket. Bob Casey, I promise you tonight, in the state of Pennsylvania, is thrown up in his mouth because he knows if he's got to stand next to Joe Biden, he's going down in Pennsylvania. If he's on the ticket, I don't know how it's going to work.
Yeah, look, I was.
All right, so that's pretty. Like I don't know. I wonder how many people feel that way. I wonder how many people when they when they're criticizing Biden's performance and they're very angry, one of their top issues would be abortion. I imagine probably quite a few. But what's interesting is he's talking about the down ballot tickets. People that are hoping to get a little bit of a bump because a voter's going to go in and they're going to see Biden, they're going to vote for Biden, and maybe they'll vote straight party ticket. And so now I think it's more than just the debate, right? Like it's not just, okay, well, he didn't do so well in the debate and he looked kind of like, like he was just too old to be up there, needs to be retired. And it's more than that. You have thousands of people potentially across the country who are concerned that Biden may cost them their election. So in my opinion, and let me just answer this comment here, do you think this was part of the plan to have the debates early, show that Biden is incompetent and replace him with Democrat X? And this comes from Brian Fleming. I kind of do. And I don't really like getting into conspiracy theories, but I kind of do because I'm like, again, back to what I said earlier. We've all got someone old in our lives. We've watched them deteriorate. We know when somebody isn't as good as they used to be, especially if we've been around them for a long time. So if you were working with Biden or, in his administration for him or in proximity to him, for the last 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 years, whatever many of these people have, they know. They know. I mean, it would be different if you asked me and said, DL, like, is he as good as he used to be? Well, I could tell you he's not, simply on the fact that he's older and I can just listen to him. But if you were to ask me, like, what's the difference between today Biden and 10 years ago? I would have to put a little thought into it because I've not worked with him closely. I've not followed him closely, but people who have, they know. So is this part of a plan? Maybe it might be. And like, as Brian, points out, and they mentioned, I think at the beginning of this clip, they said like this was the earliest that they've ever had a debate. And it's kind of weird. Like, why would you have a debate early? Like, there's been all these arguments about debates in the first place. Who gets to be in it? Where are we having it? Am I gonna, like Trump's like, I'm not gonna show up to these debates and stuff like that. So there's all these things that are going on with the debates. And then we have this one in particular early. And now you see like this ginormous panel of people that are flipping out and concerned about it. And there's no way they didn't know. There is no way that anybody on this panel right here, 10 days ago, last week, there's no way that any of them thought that Biden was going to get up on stage and outperform Trump. There's just no way. They couldn't possibly. Like, I get on Twitter and I see all these pundits, like all of us who have like normal jobs. And then we just, we're taking a break. We'll go to the water cooler. We're checking Twitter and we're offering some commentary based on, what we just heard, while we were doing our work or whatever. Right. Like, we all knew, we all could figure this out. So there's no way that these people who that's what they do for a living, like their job is to follow this stuff and just to watch all this media and analyze it. That's their job. That's what they do. They get paid to do that. There's no way they did not know this. There is no way the DNC was unaware how his performance was going to be. There's no way. So the only thing I can think of is that they intentionally did this. And then the big question is, who do they want to replace him with? Some thoughts on that later, but let's continue.
Really disappointing debate performance from Joe Biden. I don't think there's any other way to slice it. His biggest issue that he had to prove to the American people was that he had the energy, he had the stamina, and he didn't do that. And so I think that is of concern. And I think for a lot of Democrats, that's very disappointing. I will say Donald Trump also had some really rough moments in this debate. And talking to the Biden campaign, they say, their dials, they started really moving away from Trump as he was increasing his personal attacks on Biden. So I think there was a lot about his character and personal nastiness that he was putting on display, that doesn't help him with the swing voters that he needs. And I also think you saw him continue to get sort of more and more animated across the course of the debate and, give some really problematic answers about January 6th, some really problematic answers about Putin. So, Donald Trump did not get off scot-free tonight by any stretch. But look, there is no two ways about it. That was not a good debate for Joe Biden.
Ben? That was painful. I love Joe Biden. I work for Joe Biden. He didn't do well at all. He did not do well at all. And he looked, I'll give you the analysis. You kind of have the old man versus the con man. I can walk you through.
Okay, I think that's fair. Old man versus con man. But, again, going back to the woman just a moment ago, again, these are all traits that we're very familiar with. There is I don't understand where they're coming from by saying, oh, well, Trump did this and he's not going to get them swing voters, those independents. Who is not familiar with Trump at this point? Who is not familiar with him making petty personal attacks? That's what he literally practically built a brand on coming up with goofy names for all of his opponents. Like, he would just make up names. And so I don't think he's actually out of character at all. The only difference is that, again, it seems like Trump was on Ritalin, so he's a little bit, tempered, a little bit more calm, but he's still the same guy. He's still saying the same things and the same criticisms and, talking highly about himself as if, everything, like he's got the Midas touch. So
How I'm supposed to see it and say it, but I just want to speak from my heart. I love that guy. That's a good man. He loves his country. He's doing the best that he can. But he had a test to meet tonight to restore confidence of the country and of the base, and he failed to do that. And I think there's a lot of people who are going to want to see him consider taking a different course now. We're still far from our convention, and there is time for this party to figure out a different way forward if he will allow us to do that. But that was not what we needed from Joe Biden, and it's personally painful for a lot of people. It's not just panic, it's pain of what was on night.
see, right there. He says like, hey, look, there's time. And so again, back to the question from Brian Fleming, where he says, do you think this was part of a plan to have the debate early? I mean, I want you to think about this for a second. If you know that President Biden is not at the, does not have the mental faculties that he once had, because again, he's 81. So I'm not dogging the man out. Okay. The man is 81. At this point, he should be retired and enjoying the remainder of his life and not trying to get up there and outperform on a debate stage for the presidency, the United States president of the United States. I mean, it's like only one person gets to be in that role. It's a very contested role. Like people fight like dogs to get that role. And we put an 81-year-old man out there to do that. Why would we do that? Well, I think they had the debate early. So knowing that he was going to perform poorly, and so that then they can get up on TV and they can go, "Oh my God, I can't believe he did so bad. Why? Wow, he failed his test. He was supposed to show us that he had the energy." Fool, you know he didn't have the energy. We all knew he didn't have the energy. I mean, I made a joke about it before the debate. I posted a picture of the same two old men from the Muppets that I played at the top of the show. Posted, I was like, look, here's the guys getting ready for the debate, right? Because we all know they're in their, Trump is 78, so he's not quite 80, but they're basically in their 80s. And like, you're just not as good in your 80s as you were in your 70s and 60s and 50s. And so they know this. So I'm going to keep hammering away that, yes, this was intentional. Now, whether or not the CNN analysts know it was intentional, I think they do. Like, were they told? Maybe not. But do they know? Probably. I mean, they've got to know. I'm a lowly podcaster with, a few hundred viewers, an audience member of a few hundred, right? And I'm not belittling my audience. I'm just saying, like, I'm a small time guy and I got this figured out, right? Like, there's no way that these guys who do this for a living and can consult with people and have huge audiences, which basically means they have to deliver. They have to, they have to be able to do. You don't get to have a big audience if you're just totally dumb and caught off guard and don't understand how the world works. Like, that's not, you don't get to have a big audience because of that. Right. So there's no way they didn't know. If I know, they knew. Right. Like, that's just the way it is. All right, let's continue.
If I may just add to that, I think Joe Biden lost in the first 3 minutes. I think a lot of voters probably tuned out, and millions of people are having conversations with their families, with their friends, of if the president is up to the task and if he should step aside. And I'm someone who believes the former president is a threat to democracy. I think he is a threat to the America as we know it. He wants to fundamentally change our institutions. He has laid out what his plan is. I am not confident that that is the man to take him on. You cannot tell me democracy is on the line and then give that performance tonight. If based on that, in 18 weeks, Donald Trump will be the president-elect.
See, I'm telling you, they are setting this up now. Whether it's all, to the extent that it is all planned out, I don't know. But think of it this way. Imagine you've got, we don't have to imagine, take the DNC. They know where Biden is mentally. They know where he is. Okay. Because they work with him every single day. And they don't necessarily have to go to all the CNN panelists and say, all right, here's what we're going to do. Because they know the personalities. They know exactly how they'll respond. So all they've got to do is say, hey, let's have this debate early. And we're going to put Biden up there and we're going to do these things. And then from there, they just let things play out in the way that they know they will play out. Think of it this way. My wife and I know each other. We know each other very well. We've been married for 10 years. And there was, it was a number of years ago. What was the thing? So I think somebody was, I was supposed to meet my wife somewhere. I don't remember what the story exactly, but I'll give you the best recollection that I can. I'm 46, so bear with me. So I was supposed to meet her somewhere, and she knew that I wouldn't. I think I was meeting her at someone's house, and they said, "Go ahead and go in the house. Even though I'm not home." It was like a friend of ours. And we pulled up and she's like, yeah, he's going to be sitting in his car. And they were like, really? I told him to go in the house. And she's like, nah, I know my husband. Right. Like, she knew that I'm not just going to waltz into somebody's house. Like, even if it was a mutual friend, I don't think we were like, I think our friendship was kind of early on at that time. So that's why I wasn't willing to go into somebody's house. But it was something along that line, like, right, where like they had kind of said, hey, go ahead and do this. And I was like, I didn't really feel comfortable doing it. And my wife knew that she could count on the fact that I would be sitting in the car waiting, because I didn't want to go into this, friend's house or whatever it was. I think that was the scenario, right? My wife knew me. They know these analysts. They know how they'll respond. They know what they have an idea of what they're, the DNC, the people that are handling Biden, if you will. They know exactly how the CNN analyst will respond if Biden gives a poor performance. They know what they're now. They don't know exactly what they'll say, but they have a general idea. If he gives a poor performance and it's very clearly, unambiguously poor, then they're gonna freak out, right? So here they are freaking out. Now, the point again that I'm making is that it doesn't have to be all planned out. So we can kind of step back from conspiracy mode a little bit and we can say, look, you know how people will respond in certain situations if you're familiar with them enough. And so therefore, the CNN, in my opinion, the CNN analyst here, they are the panel or whatever you want to call them, they are doing exactly what is expected of them, even if they had no prior knowledge that all this was played out on purpose. But I'm willing to bet if they were honest, they would say, yeah, this makes sense. It's probably done on purpose. And they might have even known it ahead of time. They might have known, but like, this seems weird. I know that Biden is not doing so well lately. Why would they put him on a debate stage? And why would they do it so early? I think they knew, okay, we got to find a way to get this guy out of here. How do we get him out? Well, the best way is to make him look unfit. And the best way to make him look unfit is to pretend to be shocked by it. So that's what I think is going on. All right.
People doing focus groups tonight, and we'll see if our dial group with Laura Coates confirms this, that Biden actually scores pretty well on the issues when he's talking about the substance. And Trump's numbers went down both because he was ducking questions, he was lying about some things, and he was refusing to answer. And some of it was the tone. They don't like it. So when you see that, when you see sort of the statistics, you're going to look at like, oh, that's a mixed bag. But to Vance's point about the president's performance, that's what caused the panic. So the question is, and my question actually is, what happens? Because it's a great political strength of Joe Biden is his resilience and his stubbornness. It's also sometimes a blind spot because he is so stubborn. It's going to be very hard to someone, and I don't know who it is, who could go to Joe Biden and say, you need to do this. Number one. And the question is, again, like, I'm just telling you, to Abby's point, I've been doing this for 30 something years, going on 40 years, and I have never, ever had what happened on this thing tonight happen in the middle of a debate. It started early and it continued. And to Vance's point, Van made a very important point. These are people who love Joe Biden, who credit Joe Biden for kicking Donald Trump out of the White House. They're Democrats. The Democratic Party is a very diverse party. It fights about a lot of things. It has generational issues. It's had regional issues and everything else. The thing that unites the Democratic Party is trying to keep Donald Trump from getting back into the White House. They love Joe Biden for kicking him out. They don't want him back. They came into this debate nervous that Biden was in a weak position. They leave this debate panicked.
John, if you look.
See, he said it. He said they came in nervous. He knows it. He knows that they were not confident coming in. And he's like, I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm telling you, folks, these people know what's up. They may not be disclosing, and when I say they know, that doesn't mean that they were told specifically like, hey, this is the plan. Yeah, we're going to do this. Right. Not in that way. You do things and other people pick up what you're laying down and then they roll with it. That's what's happening. They're picking up what was laid down. They're rolling with it. And I think they're absolutely concerned. And they're kind of telling us, hey, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've never seen anything like this. Again, 30 years, he's never seen anything like this. People do things strategically in politics. This was not an accident. They didn't think that Joe Biden was going to come out and then just give this stellar performance. They knew this. The people that work with him, the DNC, they knew it. So, I think it's all right here. I think we know, some change is coming.
The guy, how could you put him out there? If you love him, if you love Joe Biden, if that was my father, you don't put a guy that's.
It's a great point. These guys know this better. These guys know this better because they talk to them. There's this legacy in the Democratic Party. You don't challenge the incumbent because when it's happened in the past, they haven't beaten the incumbent, and then the incumbent has lost the general election.
John King, I mean, what happens now?
A couple things happen. Number one, we wait. I would say we should wait. We won't, but we should wait a week and see how this settles out in the polling, particularly in the battleground state polling, and particularly among the most important subgroups. What happens right now is I would just say that if the Trump people are running around saying they won the debate, we'll see if that holds up. Biden lost the debate. I don't know if Trump won the debate. The early indications we're getting, again, from pollsters and party strategists who were talking to people in focus groups and doing dial groups, is that Trump actually fared pretty poorly on the issues, and his tone was negative. So I don't think we don't have any evidence before us right now, in the hour after it ended, that Trump gained a lot of new voters. Put it that way, right? Did he hurt himself with the Trump base? Absolutely not. And so Donald Trump's going to get 40-something. He's going to get 40-something. Did he grow tonight? I'm a little skeptical of that. The main issue, though, is the president of the United States, the incumbent. Again, I don't know that the old rules apply because he's running as a former president, but this is my 10th one of these. And when the incumbent is running, the American people are being asked, keep what you got. Do you like what you got? Stay the course. That was not a state-of-course performance from a president who, when he walked on stage, knew the fundamentals of this race were already bent against him.
And this
They had a 38% approval rating. 60+% of the country thinks we're on the wrong track. And as Abby noted earlier, there were already significant doubts about, can you do this for 4 more years? It's the tough.
See, I'm telling you, they knew this. They knew it. They said, can you do this for 4 more years? Your poll numbers at like, what do you say, 38%, something like that? Like the poll numbers were low. There was doubt about whether he could do it for 4 more years. And, you know, this is the worst performance, like he said, out of 10 that he had been, that he's observed, you know, and they're basically setting this up for a swap out. And they want to make the swap out look as genuine as possible. But I think ultimately what they're seeing is that Biden cannot do the job, and they already went past the point, you know, like what you might think of as the point of no return. So now they got to figure out, okay, how do we gracefully pull this out? How do we swap the guy out? Well, the best way is to make it look like, man, turns out he's not as good as we thought he was. And now he's telling us, he's like, well, why don't you wait a week? Of course you want to wait a week, right? You want to wait a week. You want to make sure that you got this right. And you want this to settle in the minds of people. They want people like me to get on there and keep criticizing and saying, yeah, look, Biden's not cut out for it. And they want doubt sowed into the minds of voters so that it makes the swap out easier and more clean and less disruptive. I'm telling you, that's what's going on. I mean, you know, I haven't done this for 10, you know, I haven't done this for 30 years, and this is the 10th one that I've done, but I can read the writing on the wall.
Toughest job in the world. And so even in the middle of the debate saying he had a cold, I have a cold. I get it. I get it. That sucks. But you know, he's the president of the United States. When the phone rings at 3 o'clock in the morning, the world doesn't matter if you have a cold or not.
and the president did intensive preparation for this debate. I mean, that's the other part of this.
And they signaled that
They told
repeatedly.
him repeatedly. I mean, he was in Camp David. All of his top advisors were there. They were preparing him as well as they possibly could for this moment. He came in here saying, sorry, Van, just a moment, but he had to solidify. And it's not just his base, it's who voted for him the last time around, right? Now, who voted for him last time around was enough for him to beat Donald Trump. Donald Trump can say just where he was the last time around. And if Joe Biden erodes so significantly that it's less than what Donald Trump got, Donald Trump wins. Okay, that's how the math works here. So he has to bring back all of those people, whether they're Democrats or not, who cast a ballot for him. Was he able to do that tonight? I don't think there's anybody who thinks that he was.
Well, I tell you, I am starting to get the pushback now from people who are not in agreement with us. I just want to get. Listen. I didn't
watch the debate.
No. I actually did. A major black leader just called me and kicked my butt, and so I just want to give the other side, which is that Republicans would never throw their guy overboard, even if they had a guy that had felony convictions, even if they had a guy that led an insurrection, even if they had a guy who was a serial liar. They would never throw their guy overboard. And there are people who are angry tonight. The Democratic Party leaders are.
Even if they had a guy that mysteriously did this thing, mysteriously, just imagine if those things happened. That's, I'm going to give him points for that. That's pretty clever a way of bringing that up, right? Like just kind of sticking it in there as if, you know, kind of talking about it as if it didn't happen, knowing that it's exactly your criticism of him. That's
already
clever.
abandoning Joe Biden, and they're saying that we already know that he's older and slower, but what he stands for matters. What he was, if you that's what I said. If you wrote out what he said, if you didn't listen to it, the substance of what he said is true to the Democratic Party, and there's a pushback beginning to say the Democratic Party is too scared to stand up for Joe Biden. Other people will.
Yeah, but can I just respond?
Yes, sir.
I believe this. I think when we see sort of voter surveys and so on of people who watch the debate and so on, they're going to be a lot different than you might think, because I don't think Donald Trump had a great night, and I think on substance Biden did fine, but that wasn't the big question about Biden. But here's the thing. People can love Joe Biden. Lots of Democrats do. I worked with him. I have deep respect for him. But as you said earlier, the stakes are enormous. You said democracy's on the line. And so it becomes less an issue about loyalty to one person than to the idea of how much are you willing to fight for.
Right there. It's less about loyalty and how much are you willing to fight, because they cannot imagine any, like, the idea that Trump would win is so terrible to them that loyalty gets a backseat, and they're setting this up, right? And now, again, I don't think this is all intentional. I don't think that the panelists all sat in a room with the DNC and they said, all right, here's what's going to go on. We want you to get on TV and we want you to act natural and we want you to kind of lay out the case. Nope. Again, I think what happened, the DNC knew, okay, bad performance, this is what's going to happen. Now, did they prep Biden to have a potentially good performance? I do think so. But I think that they knew it wasn't going to happen, right? It's kind of like the Libertarian Party We know that we're not going to win the president. You know, we can't even get in the debate stages, right? But we know we're not going to win, but we go for it and we give it the good old college try anyway, right? We still do, even though we know we're not going to win. So I think that this is kind of the case here. They knew he was going to do poorly, but they prepped him anyway, just in case maybe he would be able to deliver a win and, you know, at least get into the White House, and then they could worry about what to do after the fact, right? But I think that what they knew was going to happen happened, and that was a bad performance. And so now they got to talk about like, hey, look, we all, I mean, they like every one of these panelists have said it. They're like, we love Biden. He's great. Worked with him for a long time. But that's the kicker right there, right? But even though I'm loyal to him, the stakes are high. We just can't let this other man win. And so we're going to have to make a tough decision. And that tough decision is setting you aside, even though they should have done that a long time ago. Anyway.
Let me jump in quickly on this point that Vantage made, because one of the reasons I started this voter project is Washington is often wrong about these things. So I'm always skeptical when all the elites in Washington or the people who live comfortable lives in Washington. This conversation is not just Washington. I want to make that clear tonight. This is Democrats across the country who are watching, Democrats who live in competitive areas, Democrats who love Joe Biden. It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. But the other question I would just raise is, so there has to be a conversation with the president after tonight, right? Some of those conversations will be from people who say, sir, you should step aside. But if you want to take Van's position out there, the main organizing impetus in the Democratic Party is keep Donald Trump in retirement, right? Keep him out of the White House. So if you won't step aside, what are the conversations about what to do about tonight? Those will have to happen. So my question for the people who know best, and the one who knows the best is sitting right over there, is who can have that conversation with the president?
Who's the only person in the party?
I mean, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama might call him, but I don't know if that would matter. Is it Jill Biden, Ted Kaufman? Who is it?
Yes, yes. Jill Biden is the single most important person in terms of sharing criticism, in terms of being direct.
But will she?
Opinion. Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yes. And I imagine that there will be serious conversations within the president's inner circle. People like Mike Donilon, people like Steve Ricchetti, people like Anita Dunn, who will have very direct conversations with the president. He's not somebody who shies away. He is absolutely, I think as was said earlier, he's absolutely somebody who is stubborn and resilient, but he's actually not somebody who shies away from having tough conversations and having direct feedback. So yes, absolutely. I have to imagine there will be direct discussions with him about how to adjust the campaign for this. But I also think, to this point about waiting to see where actual voters land on this, is critically important. Before the elites sitting at this table determine that the rest of the country hated the performance, I think we got to see what voters have to say.
Right. They want to make sure they're correct. That's what they want to do. They want to make sure that they're correct on this. And because once they're correct, once they get the voter, once they have the polls, they get the, that's a weird white background. They get the support, right? So like she said, the elites at this table, which I'm glad that she acknowledged that how they think of themselves. But they have their opinion, and notice that they're all in agreement. Every one of them. I don't remember how many are on that panel exactly, but they're all in agreement. And where they disagree is very limited and inconsequential, but they're largely agreeing with each other. And they're like, well, what are we going to do? Who's going to have these tough conversations with him? And yes, we should all wait, we should wait a week and see how this plays out with the voters. In other words, what you should hear is we should wait to make sure the voters are going to support what we want to do, which is put Biden aside and put somebody else in. All right, I think we're going to try to wrap this up here. Yeah. I think I did want to, let's move a little bit ahead here, rather than play the whole thing exactly. Turned out it was a lot longer than I thought it would be. And I want to get to where they interview some actual people. So, the not elites. And let's see, I think it was in here. There we go. All right. So let's get up here. And so they're going to talk to some actual people. So let's see, that should be good.
Well, if this election plays out like the last one, it will be decided in just a handful of swing states. Right now, a quick look at what undecided voters in one of those states, Michigan, thought of what they saw and heard tonight. CNN floor coach watched the debate with them. Joins us now from Warren.
All right, some voters in Michigan.
How was it?
Anderson, we're right outside of Detroit in Macomb County at Macomb Community College. It's a really important moment because, as you well know, this is a very important swing state. It went for Trump, then it went for Biden. But here in Macomb County, the votes actually went for Trump. And we were sitting with undecided voters to figure out what they were thinking. We got the reactions in real time, and there were some very consequential moments. Here, I want to begin, though, with everyone by giving a show of hands. I want to ask the people who are with me here today. Many of you came in undecided. In fact, most of you, by watching this debate, a show of hands, how many of you have now made up your mind? This is unbelievable to think about.
Every one of them.
How impactful and influential this very moment was. I want to get a sense from all of you. We were all watching the appearance of the two candidates. What did you make of how they both performed and the way that they were appearing in the camera and beyond? Who had a strong reaction, especially to the age component?
I would have to say, after watching the debate and watching how Biden handled himself and answering the questions,
it reassured me of his unassurance, be able to lead our country. I'm concerned he was hesitant, very not cognitive. Seemed like his data, he was missing his numbers. So very concerning. That's somebody I don't think that needs to lead our country.
Does anyone share that same opinion? A couple of you do. Who does not? Let me ask you.
One of the big things that a lot of people forget, when we are typically speaking in day-to-day life, we tend to stutter as well. So sometimes it will take time to be able to think about what you're going to say. But regardless, when it comes to a strong leader and what we're looking for in a leader, I'm looking for somebody that I trust to be able to uphold policies that will protect me and are more concerned for the general well-being of everybody in the United States, which I got more from Biden, considering he did a lot more talking about policies, what he's done and what he plans to do. Whereas on the other side from Trump, all I really heard was, I've done this and it was the best ever, but I never heard what it was. Or I heard that Biden was the worst ever, but I never heard why. So there was a lot that was left unclear for me. So while he may have appeared like a stronger candidate, on paper, there was a lot missing in terms of actual debate.
You're nodding along, Victor. What do you say, so?
I would agree with that. And the rules of the debate were you could not bring notes or any written material. So I'd defy anybody to try to speak for 90 minutes and not forget some facts. And the fact that, he struggled with that. He's always had a stuttering problem. But like she said, I think the leadership qualities are there.
All right. So I want to pause here because I do believe that was intentional. Because why would you ask two 80-year-old men to show up for 90 minutes and debate your record numbers, things that are, easily disputed? Because, we've all seen it. Like one report comes out and it says, okay, well, the president, his numbers are, the deficit is this number, and somebody else comes out and says, oh, no, that's actually this number, and, employment this, and nope, but it's this number. So these, all these numbers are always debated, right? Because depending on how people want to look at it, how they want to frame it, all this good stuff. So when they're talking about the effects of their policies and they want to use specific numbers or data, then it would make sense that they could have, some sort of notes or something to remind them, like, oh, it's 27%, for this item and 35% for this other item, right? Like you don't want to just try to have to hold all of that in your head, especially if you're 80 some years old. And again, now I want you to think, I mentioned Thomas Sowell a moment ago where he was still pretty sharp, like in his 90s, early 90s. But the thing is, the numbers and the things that he works with haven't really changed a whole lot, because what Thomas Sowell does is he evaluates things, many of them historically. And so unless there's new information, then something that he identified, say 10 years ago and said, this number is 25%, whatever this is, right? Doesn't matter what it is. He says, this is 25%. If things haven't really changed, then guess what? That 25% remains the same 10 years later. And so if for 10 years, he's been saying 25%, 25%, 25%, it's a lot easier to remember that number than to try to remember all the different numbers that occurred just in the last few years. Numbers that would be disputed by different parties, different groups. One group might say 25%, another group might say 30%, so on and so forth. So then you got to try to remember all these different numbers, which are, and there's different ones. Like these are new ones. So it's not like he's been saying, like even Trump couldn't say it. He couldn't say like my approval. Like let's just say that he wanted to tell people that his approval rating was, 70%, right? Well, his approval rating wasn't 70% 10, 20, 15 years ago. So unlike an academic who has been doing some research and that information generally remains the same over time, which makes it a little easier to recall when you're 90 years old. When you're 80 years old and you've got information that's only a few years old and is disputed, then it's a lot more difficult to remember all those numbers. So it doesn't make any sense that they weren't allowed to bring in notes unless they wanted Biden to do poorly. That's the only reason that I could think of, because voters don't care if they got to have a note on some specifics. They're up there, they're standing. It's a tense situation. This guy said something about my son, like Trump brought up Hunter Biden, which is going to kind of get the emotions going for President Biden, and so now his emotions are focused on his son and maybe defending his son. And so then he may not be, as clear-headed to think about the numbers that he wanted to talk about. Right. So it makes sense that you would have notes. So I agree with this man. Like, it's kind of weird.
A very big moment as well in terms of a conversation about the felony convictions. As you know, there are 34 counts out of Manhattan for the former president of the United States. That was actually addressed today. I want to play for you all again and remind you of that moment.
He could be a convicted felon as soon as he gets out of office. Joe could be a convicted felon with all of the things that he's done. He's done horrible things. All of the death caused at the border, telling the Ukrainian people that we're going to want $1 billion or you change the prosecutor. Otherwise, you're not getting $1 billion. If I ever said that, that's quid pro quo.
How many of you heard that conversation between Trump and, of course, the debaters talking about the so-called weaponization of the government? Who believes and agrees with Trump here that he was only targeted because he was a political opponent of Biden? Show of hands. Wendy, you kind of grimaced for a second as to that agreement. Why?
I definitely think that was a political move with the timing of how the charges were brought forward. And even the charges themselves. I'm sure there's many corporations who have employees who take care of the financial documents that write down a legal expense, and you just pay the bill. I mean, I wouldn't question every legal expense on a report, but that's a felony.
Let me ask you, Steve, as well. On this point, you seem to be nodding along. What's your reaction?
I think that it's not so much the crime, it's the process or the process leading up. They're trying to use up his time so he can't campaign, use his money, his resources to pay for legal fees so he can't compete with Biden. I think that his mental acuity is a lot better than Biden's. Biden seems to be very tired. Actually, I'm tired of both of them because they just keep going back and forth, back and forth. We just need to get some younger people in there that have clean records that and start over.
Well, there was a
Okay, so I want to pause this for a second because I want to point out something. Regardless of where you stand on the felonies, okay, just think about what you just heard. A lot of people believe that the timing was suspicious. A lot of people believe that, you know what, this kind of thing probably happens a lot and people don't really put much thought to it. And, you know, a lot of people believe like this probably could get anybody. So a lot of people believe that the charges were a kind of a political hit job. Now, again, it doesn't matter where you stand on it. You could say, yes, it was, or you could say, no, it wasn't. The fact of the matter is, let's put this all together. The Democrats want to win. And as soon as it came out that Trump was found guilty on all those counts, all 34 felony accounts, what happened all across social media? People were like, this is going to make him, you know, this is going to help him. This isn't going to hurt him. And for some people, they were like, man, now I could, you know, I want to vote for him even harder, right? Like a lot of people said that. And so in many ways, it did kind of go toward him. So I think what's happening here is the Democratic Party is seeing that, you know what, turns out that wasn't such a good move for him, you know, to bring those charges, those particular charges. Right. That actually kind of helped him out because we've got people in this room here who are supposedly, you know, like they weren't sure who they were going to vote for. I don't know how much I believe that, but, you know, they supposedly didn't know who they were going to vote for. They were kind of like, you know, well, let's see who does better in the debate. And they're saying this. They're like, you know what? This could kind of happen to anybody. And it seems like a political hit job. And so now the DNC hears that. And then they see that they acknowledge a moment ago that the poll numbers for Biden are going down, right? There's a lot of problems like that. One of the questions that Biden had to answer and he didn't do such a good job of, they were like, all right, many Black Americans feel like the things that you're doing aren't helping. What would you say to them? And his answer was like gibberish. Like not in the sense that he was old. And it wasn't an answer. He didn't really answer. He just said like, look, we're going to give them lots of money and we're going to keep doing things to help them out. Like it wasn't really a good answer. And so you've got this failing support for the president. And then you see that Donald Trump, while his support may be dwindling, it doesn't appear to be dwindling nearly as fast. And the things that were expected to make it dwindle faster are not. So I think that the DNC is reading the writing on the wall. They might be a little bit late, or maybe they're like, look, maybe they saw it happening a long time ago and they're like, all right, we got to play this a little smooth, right? We got to play the long game. We can't just dump Biden and move on. So I think the evidence is here. I think we can see it. We just want to open our eyes and say like, look, there's a plan here and I don't know what the plan is,
moment I want to get to talking about sort of clean records or the tit for tats you're talking about. There was an exchange happening, this time mentioning the convicted felonies, also the accusations of the allegations of having sex with a person who was a porn star, the allegations we've heard time and time again. There was a moment that our audience here, our focus group of people and undecided voters had some pretty strong reactions to, and you're going to see on the bottom of the screen how they were reacting, how they were dividing different moments and reacting in real time. Listen to that moment.
The crimes that you are still charged with. I think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of things, of having sex with a porn star on the night while your wife was pregnant? I mean, what are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
You're going to answer?
I didn't have sex with a porn star.
I mean, talking about the morals of an alley cat, for many of you, that was a visceral moment. What was your reaction?
The entire time I'm thinking of the fact that I have 3 teenage boys that are sitting back and they're watching this presidential debate. And when I was growing up, we would have never been talking about molestation, rape, and having sex with porn stars. But here we are. So what kind of example am I setting for these 3 teenage boys who are watching both of these guys squabble on in this way?
Which one of you or any of you were satisfied by the debate in terms of their performance to make a decision tonight if you had to vote? Would you know who you'd vote for tonight? Can I ask you who you thought won, Biden or Trump? Biden, show of hands if you think he won the debate. Who thinks that Trump won that debate? Who's undecided? It's a really telling time, particularly in an area just like this, where those candidates are focused on an audience just like this. Could they persuade them? Could they make them decide? Tonight, many have already made up their mind as a result of what we saw. Anderson?
All right. So we'll cut that video. I don't want to play any more of that video. That's basically the gist of it. What I wanted to kind of point out was like it looks like that Biden is out of there. Now the big question is like, who is going to replace him? Well, there's been some speculation, and I would argue that if you know, I would argue that the speculation we should hope that it's not true. But let's watch one more video. Oops. Let's see. Let me go to where I want to go here. This one. Let's watch one more video. Why is this not doing what I want? Give me a second. Let me pull this video up here. There we go. All right. So let me get this on here. So this is a video. So people are speculating that it's going to be Gavin Newsom. Now, I don't really know. I don't really have any evidence that it will be Gavin Newsom. But let's talk about him really quickly. Let's play this clip. This clip comes from, where does it come from? It is an old clip from the San Francisco Chronicle. Ironical. That's the, okay. So it's a website from, okay. So it's a clip that's on Twitter from the San Francisco Ironical. So it is a satire site. However, they said every American should watch this video before Gavin Newsom runs for president. They said this in September of last year. So let's go ahead and we'll play this. I'll play some of it. I don't know if I want to play all of it. It's a 4-minute clip, but I think it's going to give you good enough to have a conversation about why, if the pick is Gavin Newsom, 1, it might be good for the Democrats, and 2, why it might be terrible for the country. So let's go ahead and play it. Now, by the way, this is back when he was the mayor of San Francisco. So he is now the governor of California. So this was many years ago. So I want you to keep that in mind. See, look at it. Did you just see the cavalier attitude where he looks back and he's like, "Can't believe this guy's asking me about this." Like this, we're gonna talk about this for just a brief minute. The video's almost over. It's about a little over halfway through. All right. So that was Gavin Newsom. And again, I wish I remember I didn't catch the when that actually aired. Now, why might this could be good for the Democratic Party? And I'm going to get to one of the questions, a couple questions here in the comments. Why might this be good? I want you to think about something. Donald Trump, I don't think there's anybody that can just out bravado, out boast him, right? He sets the bar very high in that regard. And I think it would be very, very difficult to find somebody that is skilled enough to be able to do that. So the way that you counter somebody like Trump, and remember, if you watched the debate last night, it was how great this was, how great I did, all these great things, right? It's just in their very kind of vague claims, and then he would kind of jab at Biden and stuff like that. And he would say, like, you're doing so terrible, and the Border Patrol, they support me, not you. All this, just like kept saying all this crazy stuff. The way that you counter that is you bring somebody that is unfazed by it and can basically play rope-a-dope in a sense. You just like Gavin Newsom, in my opinion, would be able to go toe to toe because he doesn't seem to get bothered. I mean, he did toward the end there. He was like, and even that was kind of, chill. He was like, I just can't believe this. I'm really, I'm disappointed, or whatever he said. Right. Like, but he didn't like stomp out. He was just, still had his composure. And even when, and when the reporter was bringing up all these things, he was like, well, look, you didn't go to this event. Your chief of staff didn't know where you were. He's like, so what? And then they're like, well, what about this big deficit? He's like, yeah, we got a lot of work to do. Okay, but the deficit, yeah, we have work. But what about the deficit? But yeah, we got some work to do. Right? Like, he was unfazed by this. And so I think Gavin Newsom could actually bring a challenge to Trump. And if they're as concerned as the panel earlier says they are about Trump winning and beating Biden, then from my perspective, the only person that they can put their hope in, especially this late in the game, would be somebody like Gavin Newsom. Now, I could be entirely wrong. Now, one of the questions, and one of the questions, and this is a good question. Let's see, where did it go? Oh, there was no audio with Newsom. Oh, bother. I'll have to figure out how to fix that. My apologies, folks. I did not realize that there was no audio. I will make sure to put a link to that clip in the show notes so you can go back, watch just like 4 minutes, and then I'll figure out why in the world the audio, from where I'm looking, everything appears to be fine. So I apologize for that. Basically, let me do a really quick 30-second recap of what you watched without audio. the reporter kept asking Gavin Newsom, why didn't you attend this event? What about this? What about that? What about the deficit? How come your chief of staff didn't know where you were? You took a trip to Hawaii and, nobody even knew why you left. And you could just at least see from Gavin Newsom's responses that he was very dismissive and cavalier, like he just didn't even care. And so this is what I'm getting at, is like he would be somebody that could challenge Trump, because he isn't going to be taken back or run over by Trump's bravado. I mean, he wasn't even, like, he was unfazed with the reporter asking legitimately tough questions. So let me go back to this question. Or it's not, I guess it wasn't really a question so much. But Joe says, RFK Jr. for the DNC. To be honest with you, one, I don't think the DNC is going to bring him back. They could, but I don't think they're going to bring him back. I think the blood now is bad. But I also don't think that RFK can mount a challenge sufficient against Trump. I just don't think he's going to do it. That's not to say that I disagree with him on certain policies, or that he's not a candidate that can at least get some numbers. I think he will put a hurting on the Libertarian candidate, because, there's basically two third-party candidates, if you will. And I mean, not strictly speaking third-party candidates, but there's the duopoly. So whoever the Democrats are going to end up having, and then there's Trump. And so they're going to basically get the majority of the votes. And then the third-party candidate would normally fight for however many they can get. But now that's going to be tossed up between Chase Oliver, the Libertarian candidate, and then RFK, who is running as an independent. But I don't think that RFK has the ability to really mount a challenge against Trump, because I think that what RFK would try to do is basically try to talk over him. I don't think that it's a matter of being able to disarm Trump's behavior. You have to be able to disarm it. So there's one of two ways. You can be sly and slick like Gavin Newsom, or you can out Trump. And I just don't see that there's anybody out there that could out Trump. Like, he's good at it. He's been doing it for years. He made a name for it. He got a lot of supporters because of it. And I just don't see anybody that's capable, even though he's 78, I don't see anybody that's capable of out Trumping. And I mean, in the bravado sense, basically taking the stage, the person that comes in and is able to talk over you and command presence, right? That's the important part. But if you've got somebody that's unfazed by all that, then you have somebody that can present a challenge. And I'm not sure that Trump is ready for it, to be honest with you, because Trump is used to steamrolling people. He's not used to somebody disarming him and causing him to have to figure out how to deal with this disarming that just occurred. He's used to just talking over people, belittling them, using insults, getting a laugh from the crowd, and then getting applauses. So for me, no, I don't see RFK as being the DNC pick. And right now I see it as Gavin Newsom. And I think that's extremely scary. So why is it scary? Well, he was the mayor during that interview. And it was an interview that should have tanked his political career, because he didn't answer any questions. He dismissed things, act like they were no big deal, including like the deficit, the budget. Like he just was like, yeah, we got a lot of work to do. And so what? How is that a big deal? Duh. Right. Like that's his attitude, even though he contributed to it. And then when asked why he wasn't going to events, he was like, dude, you're making a big deal about nothing. And he said that. He literally said, this is much ado about nothing. And so he was very dismissive, didn't seem bothered by the criticism. So I think that if you get somebody like Trump who tries to play the criticism game, tries to play the steamrolling game, I think he's going to meet his match with Gavin Newsom. And I think he might actually lose. So that's my opinion. Hopefully I'm wrong. Right now, this is not a support for Trump. I am supporting Chase Oliver, but hopefully I am wrong. And Gavin Newsom doesn't run and it's somebody else, because I know it's hard for people to think of this, But if you want to think of somebody scarier than Trump, I think it would be Gavin Newsom. I mean, California, there was a report just a few weeks ago where $24 billion, billion with a B, was unaccounted for. And all that money was supposed to go toward addressing the homelessness problem. And you know what happened instead? Homelessness went up by 50%. So their homelessness problem went up, and they have no accountability for $24 billion. That's a lot of money. And that's just the monetary issue. Like, we're not even talking about some of the batshit crazy laws that Gavin Newsom would support, or the laws that he would support, even though he doesn't follow them. Because you might remember Gavin Newsom put California on lockdown during COVID. People weren't supposed to be gathering in groups of more than, like, I don't know, it was like 10 or something like that. They had a limitation. And he went to somebody's 50th birthday party and got there and got caught, and then came out and was like, well, I didn't realize that there was going to be so many people there. Like, no, you did. You're the governor. Nobody who has access to a governor and invites a governor to their 50th birthday party is having one or two people there. That doesn't happen. So he knew there was going to be a bunch of people there. But even if he didn't, he should have immediately walked in and said, whoa, there's way too many people here. You need to shut this down. I need to leave because this is not acceptable. But he's not playing by the rules that he wants everybody else to play by. So the man squanders money. And, I'm sorry that you guys couldn't hear the audio, but he couldn't account for, or he wouldn't account for the deficit when he was a mayor. He's lost $24 billion as the governor, at least, probably way more, but at least there's $24 billion that we know that was reported that they can't account for. And the homelessness problem went up. He locked down people, citizens of California, and then deliberately went and defied his own orders and then dismissed it. The man is a total snake. And I think it's going to be weird to say this, but I think he's worse than Trump. And that's not praising Trump at all. That's just saying this devil is worse than this devil. That's all I'm saying there. All right, folks. It was a long episode. I apologize. Almost, minute or an hour and 20 minutes. So I apologize. I hope that you found the episode informative and inspiring. I want you to be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern, for an informed discussion on politics and culture. By the way, I'm scheduled to have a special episode this afternoon at noon. So normally what's going on, Thursdays, I'm going to be interviewing candidates. On Fridays, I'm looking to get dads on for my Dad Talk series, where I just talk to dads about what's important to them. So it may be about politics or maybe not. Maybe a dad wants to come on and talk about how he's enjoying doing automotive work with his children, his son or his daughter or children, right? So whatever a dad wants to talk about. 7 a.m. is a bit difficult for some people. So I've got a guy, and we're aiming for a noon show today, have our Friday Dad Talk. So if you're available, check it out. But if not, you can watch it later. That's cool too. Make sure that you are subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com, or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. Both will take you there to wherever you prefer. And while you're there, do me a favor, let me know how I'm doing by leaving a comment in the under the video. Last but not least, I want you to remember, if you are a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week, a great weekend. Hopefully catch you in just a few hours. But for now, I'm out.